I'll never look at a shiny Eevee in the same way again. Ever. It started only a few days ago. I was on the internet looking for action replay codes. I really wanted one for either a shiny Vulpix or a shiny Eevee. The code was long, but I was willing to take the time to put it in. It took about 15 minutes to put the code in, but I was so excited to get the code into action. I started my Soul Silver game up with the code on. I clicked on continue, and my previous save data came up. I was saved right in front of the Pokemon Center. I rushed into the place with my Typhlosion following behind me. I went to the PC and pressed A. Claus booted up the PC. I clicked A on Bill's PC. Pokemon storage system activated. I pressed the L and R buttons down and moved to box 5, where a shiny Eevee was supposed to come up. I moved the cursor over the Eevee. It was named 4 uppercase E's and a lowercase e. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Let's just call him E. And it was level 1. Its moves were Tackle, Growl, Sand Attack, and Swift. I took out my level 1 Giratina from my party and put it into the first box of the PC. Afterwards, I put E in my party. I wanted to trade it onto my Heart Gold version since it was the one I always play. I got my other DS and popped Heart Gold into it. I turned it on and clicked continue. Once both of my players were in the Union Room, I started the trade. I traded a Cubone onto my Soul Silver in return for E. Once the Pokemon were traded into the separate versions, I made both players leave the Union Room, and saved, one at a time. Once turning off the system Soul Silver was in, I went to playing Heart Gold. I wanted to clone E so I could get the rest of the evolutions. I wonder if I have a Thunderstone. I wondered to myself as I opened my character's bag. The only evolution stone I had was a Water Stone. Vaporeon will do for now, I guess. I clicked A on the Water Stone and clicked on E. I watched as the Eevee evolved into a pink Vaporeon. Once the evolution process was done, I saved the game and turned it off, as it was time for me to go to bed. Several days passed. I had gotten all the shiny evolutions except for Flareon, but that didn't matter to me. I'd get it later. I wanted to get E back onto my Soul Silver. I got my DS and popped in my Action Replay DSi along with Soul Silver. Once the code list loaded, I clicked on the shiny Eevee code and started up the game. I clicked continue as soon as the options came up. I was saved in the Pokemon Center this time. I ran over to the PC. Claus booted up the PC. I clicked A on Bill's PC. Pokemon storage system activated. I was already in box 5. I moved to box 6 and held down the R and L buttons. I moved back to box 5. Instead of an Eevee icon in the box, there was the egg icon. I moved my cursor onto it. It was a bad egg. I moved the egg to the side of the box and tried it again. Another bad egg. I moved this egg to the bottom and tried a third time. This time, E appeared in the box. I moved E back into my party. I wanted to train him. I disregarded the fact that I had 2 bad eggs in my PC box and logged off the PC. I ran out of the Pokemon Center to train E. I had the max EXP code on, so this would be easy. After flying to Goldenrod City on my Ho-Oh, I ran out of the city, knowing that I had sneaked past some of the trainers. Once a trainer had spotted me, I sent out E. The opposing trainer would send out a level 10 Diglett. I returned E and sent out my trusty Typhlosion. After the foe's Diglett attacked, I selected Typhlosion's command. This wouldn't be hard at all for him, since he was level 100. I selected Slash. Typhlosion used Slash. Foe Diglett fainted. I held down the R button so E would gain max experience points. E grew to level 2. E grew to level 3. This went on until E grew to level 37. Trainer is about to send out Zubat. Will Claus change Pokemon? I selected yes and sent out E. Go E. Trainer sent out Zubat. I selected the fight command, then chose Swift. E used Swift. Foe Zubat died. Zubat died, I had questioned. I shook my head and ignored it, although, through my confusion, I had forgotten to hold down the R button to get the max EXP for my Eevee. Trainer is about to send out Diglett. Will Claus switch Pokemon? I select no this time. Trainer sent out Diglett. What will EE do? I selected the fight option and then chose Swift again. EE used Swift. Foe's Diglett died. Again, the Pokemon had died. Even though this still confused me, I remembered to hold down the R button. EE grew to level 38, grew to level 39, grew to level 40. This continued until EE reached level 52. The opposing trainer didn't do anything after I beat him, before the screen went back to the overworld. I got the evolution screen and EE was on there. What? EE is evolving! The animation started showing as it was trying to evolve into Espeon. I clicked the B button since I already had a shiny Espeon. What? EE stopped evolving. I noticed that EE seemed to be angry. I ignored it and went on to training it. After about 5 minutes or so, EE was trying to evolve into Espeon again. I pressed the B button again. The EE seemed even angrier at me. I was once again in the overworld. Before I could do anything, my trainer faced EE and an angry icon appeared over the shiny Eevee's head. EE wants to evolve into Espeon. Yes or no options came up. Being that I didn't want it to evolve into Espeon, I clicked no. The angry icon appeared over EE's head again, and the small sprite jumped up and down as if it were throwing a tantrum. EE wants to evolve. Another yes or no option came up. I clicked no again. EE didn't do anything this time. I opened up my party and noticed all my Pokemon were now bad eggs, except for EE. I clicked on the EE, then on summary. EE's sprite had an evil-looking smirk on its face and red eyes. I started getting tired of it. I went to a Pokemon Center and went to the PC. Claus booted up PC. I clicked A on Bill's PC. Pokemon storage system activated. I selected EE and then clicked on release. EE won't leave without a fight. Suddenly, I was dragged into a random encounter. EE wants to fight. Go, Typhlosion. There were two things I noticed here. The first thing was that I suddenly had my Typhlosion back. The second thing was both EE's and Typhlosion's sprites were bloody. EE still had that grin on its face and was now blood on its eyes and ears. Typhlosion's sprite looked very much like it was in pain. Blood was dripping from its mouth and nose, flesh was exposed on its forehead, and the flame on its neck looked weak. What will Typhlosion do? I clicked the fight command, then chose Flamethrower. Typhlosion is scared. What? I whispered to myself. I didn't know Pokemon would get too scared to attack. EE used Bite. The attack dealt much damage to my Typhlosion, but it wasn't down yet. There was more blood on it now than before. What will Typhlosion do? Fight. Flamethrower. Typhlosion is scared. I sighed. Again? I whispered. EE used Kill. Typhlosion has died. No! I yelled. I was glad my dad wasn't home when I had said that. Claus is out of usable Pokemon. Claus fell victim to EE. I was once again confused. What did it mean by fell victim? I was back in the overworld, but I was in what seemed to be Ilex Forest instead of the Pokemon Center. The forest was a dark red instead of its normal green color. Bones and rotting flesh were strewn across the area. The little pond was blood red too. At this point, I was starting to feel sick to my stomach. Then I noticed something. EE was right in front of my trainer. EE's sprite jumped up and down. EE wants you to suffer. I was getting scared to go on with this. I moved my thumb towards the power button. Don't even try it. You're not getting away from me. A voice came through the speakers of my DS. I assumed the voice belonged to EE. The screen turned black, and the only sound I could hear was what sounded like slashing. When the overworld came back, I saw my trainer lying on the ground in a pool of blood. He had an arm and leg missing, and his eyes were pitch black. I presume that his eyes were ripped out. EE's sprite jumped up and down again, then a happy icon appeared over EE's head. I tried turning the game off again, and to my surprise, it worked this time. I sat on my couch, speechless, and was breathing hard for a moment before turning it back on. I clicked on Soul Silver once. I was on the DSi menu. After the title screen came up, I was immediately taken to a wild encounter. My trainer's sprite was missing his eyes and an arm. I swallowed hard. This greatly disturbed me. Then the opposing Pokemon appeared. E attacked. I noticed that E had shiny Espeon ears, tail, and a jewel. Blood was dripping from the ears, tail, and jewel. Its eyes were red and also had blood dripping from them too. Its cry was like a demonic version of Espeon's cry. The only option was Ball. I clicked on it. Claws use one Pokeball. E goes into the ball. It shakes once, and again. Then E breaks out. E doesn't want to go back. EE used kill. Oh no, I had said quietly to myself. There was a flash of crimson red before a text box came up. EE has killed Claws. The screen went back to the overworld. My trainer's sprite wasn't there. EE's sprite was now grinning widely. You should have let me evolve. EE's voice echoed through the speakers of my DSi. The game turned itself off as EE finished talking. I was too terrified to turn it back on. I threw my DS at the wall. Surprisingly, only my Soul Silver game pops out of it. I picked up the game cartridge and threw it in the trash can in the corner of my room. I sat there on my couch wondering what had just happened. I turned on my TV, and the screen was black. I figured I had just left it on the channel I used to play on my Wii. I turned through the channels before leaving it on 29. The screen remained black. I sighed and reached to press the power button. But before I could, an eerie voice came through the speakers. You should have let me evolve.